Welcome back to Italy, to where this palace had been abandoned once more. But with a new chapter there soon to be shared, we return to the place that funds everything we do at the palace. Because the story of coming back has changed everything. While waiting for the palace to become safe again, we move back into Villa Bellatorre and get hard at work doing all the renovations we never had the chance to do. With a collective of 2 years of work finally coming to its end. Leading to a fateful decision that's best described as bittersweet. We return to where we first left Villa Bellatorre's story, after its very first summer season of rentals that had successfully funded our first phase of palace renovations. We returned to pick up the more antique pieces that had just about survived the heavy use of that first season, taking them to the palace for a better state of preservation and, in many cases, a more suitable surrounding for them to live out their remaining years. And protected in these spaces, hopefully that will be many years indeed. But as you know from our last episode, all of those plans unraveled and we had to leave. This would turn into a nearly 6-month-long exile, from which we would eventually return, and I will even be bringing you back later in this episode for a little sneak peek of the present day, thanks to our video sponsor, Bambu Lab. And with the early winter frosts starting to close in, we return to our now vacant jewel, nestled in the Tuscan hills, with an opportunity on our hands. With the villa now half unfurnished, we had semi-vacant spaces to completely look anew at the interior design. Like these more contemporary sideboards we added to the lounge, along with a new lounge set that tied these walnut wood pieces all together. A decent first foray, I think, but there was more to be done. We never wanted the property to feel like it was a second-hand showroom of old furniture. A much more fun dance to do here was to find a smart way to balance the old with the new. In this case, we commissioned Carrara marble tops for this old coffee table and those sideboards, allowing them to have a coherent design language despite their difference in style and years. And this is exactly when something very exciting we'd been waiting for months arrived in the post. Something we'd been designing ever since we first conceived of this place. Eccolo! There was something super special about that moment. Maybe it was something about having an official sign that reflected the name that we gave this place and our design that we also brought to the table, when so much else of what you see is simply honoring what came before. But this is something to be cautious of too, as we refresh the design of the dining area, soon to be taking those heavy chairs down to the cantina where we'll be creating a wine tasting room, and instead bringing a more contemporary balance to this space. And it was here that we made an unpleasant discovery. I'll be coming back to that in a moment, but it spurred on a trip to the southern hills of Florence to the antique area of terracotta furnaces. Regulars to this channel will know that I'm an absolute terracotta stan. And how can I not be? Just look at the way that the light plays with those textures and tones. And while floor tile shopping, this is when we met Romulus and Remus. At least that's how we named them. And we realized we simply couldn't leave without them. The depths of winter had well and truly arrived. And it was really quite magical, seeing Villa Bellatorre in a way that we had never seen it before. With those snow flurries outside, I can explain what our intentions are for the flooring and why it was we took that trip to Impruneta to explore the terracotta. Both for aesthetic reasons, as you can see in those areas where the 1970s intervention left some very unpleasant tile choices in our hands, but also for reasons of severe degradation that had only been revealed as we were refurbishing the dining area. It seems that the heavy foot traffic that was produced over the summer rentals had severely destabilized the flooring, and the 80-year-old substrate had completely disintegrated. Not surprising really, given it was a space that was abandoned for several decades, and despite seeming firm at first, clearly gave way after its first exposure to actual use. Combined with wood bugs starting to make their mark, and this honestly unconvincing attempt to improve the areas with those 1970s tiles with a runner carpet, we decided that it was time to reevaluate the entire flooring and to give it a lease of life that would last not just a few decades, but potentially for centuries. And so as the snow settled and Christmas approached, plans were afoot for a complete transformation. But first, a moment to breathe and to reconnect with dear friends and family over the festive period. Celebrating 2026 in style with the opening of one of Florence's many palaces for New Year's celebrations.
Happy New Year! Happy New Year!
And with the thumping music and headache from the hangover fading into the past, we could turn our attention again back to the work at hand. Now, of course, a very real option was to find a way to completely restore the original parquet flooring from the late 1930s. This would have involved completely removing it, as we had done anyway, and replacing about a third of the wooden slats. But the degree to which it had degraded in less than a century meant that we decided to go for an authentic Tuscan material, that of course of terracotta, that would last at least for centuries, if not, in the case of some Roman ruins, for millennia. But the thing that was so important to us was to execute this work in a way that very much honored what came before. And so the exact formation that existed with the parquet flooring was to be recreated simply with terracotta, using this herringbone chevron formation with the ancillary spaces like the studio and the long corridor, as well as the border for the main room itself, being these square tiles. And with the final pass of the sealant being put down, as well as a slightly modified painting scheme to marry the walls with the new flooring, you could appreciate how the fact that these are all handmade very much gave the feeling that this flooring had always been there, despite being brand new. And of course, we could not miss the opportunity to have a special cutout for our design of Villa Bellatorre to welcome guests as they entered this refreshed space. And so for what we hoped was going to be the final time, we redressed the spaces. And as we did so, something really quite magical happened. Because as it turned out, we had accidentally completely turned the process of renovating this space upside down. We did the very first thing that should be done in a space like this at the very end, and we had beforehand figured out all of the furnishing. And what this meant is that when all of these pieces finally fell into place, despite this higgledy-piggledy order, it was a moment of clarity and surprise that we hadn't expected. Everything suddenly made sense. The feeling, the light, the comfort. It was something that had never quite fully connected before, but now whether it was the cozy blue light of the evening or the warm midday sun streaming in from the valley, every time of day just felt like an absolute pleasure. And it was only in that moment that we could finally relax our nervous systems, as our job as renovators and designers finally felt complete. Now, of course, so many other interior design changes took place, and I'll be showing you those dramatic before and afters at the end of the episode. But of course, this is only half of the story, and the last time we visited Villa Bellatorre, I had shown you how we built with our own hands that lovely panoramic pool, but the remainder of the landscaping was left in an admittedly fairly bare-bones state. And in these final few months before the opening of a new rental season, we were determined to change that. From reinforcing the huge man-made panoramic terrace upon which the entire estate sat and viewed over the valley, to actually bringing some design aspect to the outside, there was a lot to be done. I'll be returning to this beautiful centerpiece of the palm tree in a moment, But first we should take a look at these stunning sculptural olive trees that we decided to get to improve the upper terrace to create a new feature paying homage to the olive groves that surround this villa and that first gave it its agricultural wealth back in the day. Another aspect of our design was to bring several water features to the space, to bring movement, life, and a nice dancing noise to the ambience. And as you can see here, the old planters provided that perfectly, along with this new centerpiece created in the main square of the upper terrace. Now, prior to these improvements, this was definitely a space that suffered from that new car smell vibe, in the sense that it was refurbished but sterile and lacked design or character. With the new furnishings and features, it connected with the interior design in a way that it hadn't done before. And we curated these spaces to make the outdoors feel like an extension of the interior space, so you could dine or have a remote working office or even a session of yoga on that panoramic terrace. And that focal point of the palm tree down in the parking bay, well, that was to become a new roundabout. This beautiful, albeit surprising last gasp of winter ushered in spring. And as you may notice from those wires we were just about to tidy up, a brand new lighting scheme too. To us, lighting is such an important and often overlooked aspect of design, and we were not going to let this opportunity go to waste. Returning just for a couple minutes to the palace, present-day Jordan would like to tell you about how his morning coffee has been made all the more delicious, thanks to 3D printing from Bambu Lab. Allow me to explain. Today's episode is sponsored by the P2S 3D printer and the AMS2 Pro filament system, with the challenge set of exploring just how this handy machine can solve all sorts of niggling little issues around the home. And of course I hit the ground running with a rather overly ambitious project of a mechanical press coffee tamper. I mean, anything that improves our morning rituals is a win, right? But building this multi-component item really allowed me to push this system through its paces. You can see how each 3D printing phase allowed for customization, all done digitally, with any change in filament color handled automatically by the machine without me having to touch it at all. And with the internal camera allowing me to remotely monitor everything, I simply needed to return when everything was printed. And this being my first complex model, I really got to test just how durable each of these pieces were. And I must say I was very pleased with the result. But I could barely believe that something that was effectively conjured out of thin air was suddenly going to be functional. I ran downstairs and gave it a test, and a combination of that morning shot of caffeine and seeing just how well it worked gave me another idea that I couldn't wait to try. You see, my favorite thing about our recent kitchen renovation, these cabinets, was also the most problematic, as of course no standard drawer organizers fit them. To the rescue, the famous 3D printed Gridfinity system to solve this chaos. Finding a vast selection of modular organizers through the MakerWorld Library, I realized that I could customize completely these drawers in any way that I wanted, with the grid system on the bottom locking it into place and putting to the test the durability of this finish, this particular filament being wood effect. I can conclude that the results are not only attractive, but also functionally a quality of life improvement, which got me thinking even bigger. Remember this scrape I was using before? That was 3D printed too, a community design tool to improve the very machine that made it come into existence in the first place. So, browsing MakerWorld to see just how ambitiously I could push this concept, I printed a suite of accessories to enhance in many different ways, some big and some small, this handy piece of kit in my home. Since in doing so was a proof of concept of all the other handy bits of kit around the home, whether it be a drone or a camera or a vacuum cleaner, that could also have its own accessories custom printed for them. And case in point, this particular improvement allowed me to pivot up the filament section for when I wanted to do a one-click quick swap of the hot end nozzle, making this premium enclosed design even a little bit better. And so at last we can inspect the machine itself with this 5-inch touchscreen to inspect the settings and to control the progress, along with an auto-calibrating flow system to control the filaments. Consider me a Bambu Lab convert. Click the link in the description below to learn more. And so we return to Villa Bellatorre for the final time. Why the final? I'll let you know in a moment, once I share with you those dramatic before and after transitions at the end of the video. But in these final weeks before the new rental season, it was a mad rush to clear the old building materials and to do a final big upgrade, the double glazing of all 30 of the nearly century-old doors and windows of the villa. This one was left to the professionals, with the cornice on one side eaten up so that the thicker pane of glass could be placed, and a new copy of the cornicing recut by a woodworker to reseal the entire panel. And with the many beautiful windows and doors of the villa now brought into the 21st century, it also coincided with the arrival of springtime, as you can see with that blossom tree exposition we created just there, and the advent of something that was long overdue. It had been literal years, plural, since we had given ourselves any sort of vacation, and in this little window of time, we allowed ourselves to explore this place that we called home. As a couple that had grown a bit too accustomed to spending every penny we'd earned on restoring these ancient properties, we had gotten out of practice on how to treat ourselves. And fortunately, with the growth of my social media over the last year, many of these adventures came about through collaborations, and so we didn't need to feel quite so guilty. Not that exploring Italy's many palaces and beautiful cities is not worth every penny, but it allowed us access to something we'd never had before, which was these 5-star hotel stays. Lovely also for ourselves and our rest and recuperation, but also as inspiration, and also how to cultivate that luxury sense of a cozy home away from home. And so, of course, in these dying days of spring, just with summer cresting over the horizon, we put all of these lessons to good use back at Villa Bellatorre. Like with the creation of a characteristic wardrobe room and lounge adjacent to the primary suite, an area that had previously just been a through space to the bathroom and the tower above, with the creation of additional layers of character as well in the other bedrooms, like with this canopy in the secondary suite, and the additional drilling of downlighting in the staircase to create that almost grand hotel lobby vibe, combined with the artwork to give a sense of interest in this otherwise transitory space, especially comparing it to when it was first refurbished and simply freshly painted. And with that, let's go back to the very beginning, almost 2 years ago, with drama, blood, sweat, tears, heart and soul, but oh so very worth it for the transformations we're about to enjoy together. It's on a bittersweet note that I watch back on all the work that we've done here, and I would truly love to hear down below what you think of the transformation. But it is the end of the road of our relationship with Villa Bellatorre, and this past summer likely to have been its last rental season, as we now put her up for sale. We feel like we have done everything that we can here, bringing her back from the brink, giving her a new lease of life, and in a position to be handed on to another family of like-minded dreamers. A place that for the last 2 years we have given everything that we have, and in return we've been gifted the inspiration and the means to continue our work at the palace. Next episode, we return to the palace as we finally find a way to move back in and make a curious discovery after our hunt for frescoes hidden underneath the paint. Until then, love from Italy.